Most tax pros leave a message.
It's Jane. I'm moving on to a TurboTax expert who beat your price. Adam Devine, tell him how I feel.
Hey, tax pro, she's been thinking twice. Best believe TurboTax will beat your price. This is a tax break.
Switch to a TurboTax Live expert and we'll beat what you paid your pro last tax season. Make the switch at TurboTax.com/beatyourprice. TurboTax full service only. Sign up by 12/20/2024 and file by 4/1/2025. Full details at TurboTax.com/beatyourprice.
Ah yes, the magnificent Trolley Sour Bright Crawler, also known as Trollicus brightolus. The worm's captivating neon colour makes it an easy gummy prey.
Trolley!
It's a surprisingly sour, invitingly chewy, staggeringly snackable species unlike anything else found on this planet.
Eat me!
Delicious. Visit Trolley.com to shop now.
Trolley, eat me!
Hey, Weird Algorithm. We are here somewhat backstage for
Front
a Weeda
stage.
show. Front stage. We're front stage at a Weeda show, and we are here to talk about mailbags. We have a ticking time on this, so we're going to 20 emails, Matt. 20 emails.
I mean, that seems like a lot, but you know what? We're here. We're in Delaware. We got 20 emails to read. I'm ready. I am ready for it.
Okay, so the first email we got was, and I may have read this one already. I don't.
Oh, okay.
This was the one that I couldn't remember.
All right, I'm gonna see if I can remember.
It was from Dory, and it says, "Help! I like Money for Nothing, Beverly Hillbillies, and Alapalooza more than I probably should. Please help me."
That does actually sound a little bit familiar, but maybe that's just how I also feel inside. It's possible that's why it sounds familiar, because it's my emotional response as well. Either way, I agree.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. All right, so we'll dive into the first, I would say, real email.
Sure.
This one comes from Dan PT. Mm-hmm. He says, "First off, still love your show. Secondly," that's not a very good start. I feel like he's about to tell us.
First off, still love your show. Having said that, you guys have really let it slip.
Yeah. Number 2, I may be too weird for the Weird Algorithm, but my 7-year-old and I listen to Peter and the Wolf every month or two at bedtime. It's terrible bedtime music, but it makes us laugh. I suppose it helps that we listened to Prokofieff's music with David Bowie narrating back when I was 4 or 5. And I am with you on Carnival of Animals Part 2. I agree that it seems like a half effort from Al. 3, the reason that I'm writing is that I suspect Al's videos are full of cameos, but I noticed at the end of Headline News that the last non-sumo to leave the performance was Doug Liaowi, famous at the time for being the courtroom reporter on the uncourtroom show The People's Court. Wikipedia confirms it under his other works. And then to reprise number 1, thanks again. Your podcast jumps to the front of the line whenever it's released.
Oh, okay. Well, that's nice. I did not know that, and I'm also not, I guess I'm not familiar enough with the People's Court to have been able to make that connection.
But that's kind of interesting that he's like, for Headline News specifically.
Yeah, for
like,
People's Court. Yeah, there's definitely some interesting thought behind that pick. Yeah, I agree.
All right, so this next one comes from Veteran Yoda.
Veteran Yoda, great.
And you might remember a part of this when I start reading it.
Okay.
But it starts with, "Holy shit balls. I just listened to Matt Kelly read my last email on air and actually sing my parody lyrics.
Oh, boy. This does not sound familiar, yes.
And yet I still love your show. It actually made my month. I'm writing you to let you know how your show actually touched me. Last month, on May 26th, I lost a family member very tragically. And in the most traumatizing way possible, a family member was then shot in the head and killed.
Oh, my God.
When we drove through a gang shootout leaving my daughter's high school graduation. Your show has been something to look forward to every week, and hearing you guys laugh and discuss my letter was such a joyful experience. It carried me through some very hard times. The off-key singing was awesome, and yes, it was definitely a Wheatus reference I was trying to make. I love the show, and Albuquerque is also my favorite food song, even though I do, in fact, love sauerkraut."
Wow.
You know, I wanted to read that one. I don't know if that one was sent with the intention of us reading, but I think it's always nice to be reminded that our goofy little show does more than just make people laugh. It helps.
No, I mean, it seems like, don't know what to really say in response to that, but I'm glad that we were able to give you a little bit of light in that moment, and I hope you're doing better.
Yeah.
At least, yeah. Thank you. It is as sad as it is to hear. It is also nice to hear. So thank you.
This next one comes from Ethan. He said, "Hi, found this a couple weeks ago and have been listening every day and enjoying what you guys are making, even if you go off topic on what the song is.
What?
But it gives
When have
the
we ever done that?
It gives the podcast a mysterious nature."
Mysterious.
Going on listening, not knowing what song is being talked about. That's the whole email. I love that email.
I love that email too. That's a great email. Thank you so much.
I know we just read a very heartwarming email, but I think that's my favorite email.
Thank you. Thank you.
This next one comes from Paul. He said, "Hey guys, just listened to the second half of the mailbag episode this morning on the way to work, during which I realized that I had neglected to mention the date and time of the show that we were going to see Wheatus at."
Oh, God.
There was this one. I'll be at the Lakewood show on August 15th, so it's definitely passed.
We might have to do mailbags more frequently if this is like we're
But he said, "I was disappointed to hear that Matthew Milligan, or do you prefer Matt or Matthew?" We'll get back to that question in a second.
Sure.
"I may not be there, but I promise you that I will not allow that possibility in any way to detract from my enjoyment of the show. Going to see live music with my kids, my daughter in particular who plays guitar, has been a treat. The venue, Marshall's, was a 20-lane bowling alley that hosts... Mahal's, sorry.
Yeah.
Was a 20-lane bowling alley that hosts musical acts and has recently gone through a significant remodel, removing 10 of the lanes to create more accommodating space for the performers. In any case, whether you're there or not, I hope Wheatus and Brendan appreciate that your podcast has indirectly led to the sale of at least 5 tickets. So get your props, Matt. All the best, Paul." This is a question that comes up. Do you prefer Matt or Matthew?
I usually... Nowadays, I mean, it's changed throughout my life. I usually go by Matthew, or I introduce myself as Matthew. I don't really mind terribly either way. Either one is fine, but most people who know me well call me Matthew.
Okay.
And I am sorry, I was not at the Mahal's 20 Lanes show that happened about a month ago, but I can say right now, actually, I have it on very good authority that we are going back to that exact place early next year for a full band 25th anniversary show.
I'm very excited about
Wheatus are doing a tour next year in the spring across America for the 25th anniversary of the debut album. And my understanding is that Mahal's is absolutely part of that tour. So I heard it was a great show, and I'm sure that it was a great show because of those 5 tickets sold. I'm definitely going to be negotiating a cut of that sale, even though I wasn't there. Yeah, I mean, I hope you had a great time. I know this is before you went to the show. I hope you enjoyed it enough that you'll come back and see me with Wheatus there in, I think, March of next year. More on that soon, but yes, thank you.
Nice. This next one comes from Joanna. Said, "I just wanted to let you know that Al has said that when he showed the Circus of the Stars video to his daughter, she punched him in the arm because it was real with absolutely no safety wires in place."
That is what I was afraid of.
Yeah.
I really cannot believe, I mean, it really says a lot about how much we've changed that anyone suggested that to Al and that the people in his world said it was okay.
Yeah.
That is crazy. Truly.
All right, we got a lengthy one here from Brett.
Okay.
He said, "Greetings from the Great White North, Mats. I discovered your podcast last year. I've been working steadily to get caught up. I binge occasionally, but I don't want to run out, so I ration my episodes. I recently wrapped up the UHF series, and now I'm only a few months behind you. I love your podcast, and I've loved revisiting my favorite Al tunes and material. I'm reevaluating several tunes just as you do, and I'm starting to appreciate a few things that I hadn't before. There's a few times I wanted to write in to give you a piece of info that you didn't have or to chime in, but I was so far behind it seemed irreverent. But now I can't remember what I wanted to tell you. However, I think your Al Music episode is recent enough that it's worth providing some type of insight. Tonight I was listening while I was walking my dogs, and I had seen some of the Al TV here in Canada, but for me it was definitely Al Music. And I was excited that you were tackling it. You were talking about the frantic, phonetic, seemingly low-budget aspects of Al Music. At one point, you talked about how he was walking on the desks while filming and ran into another VJ who spoke to him as if he wasn't broadcasting. I can tell you that the early 90s Much Music was like that. Loose, informal, accessible, and it felt very anti-establishment. City TV was founded in the early 1970s and then began broadcasting out of a former Electric Circus nightclub, in which became known for its intensely local format based on newscasts aimed at younger audiences, nightly movies, etc. Its parent company was Chum Radio and expanded more rapidly. I lived about 200 kilometers from Toronto, and somehow I knew about City TV, despite the fact that I didn't think I could receive it until I had cable. I had no idea how such this relatively small network expanded so much and so quickly and produced so much television. Sex TV and fashion television, live TV shows, media television, and the Speaker's Corner. For a loony, you could record a minute of video that would be broadcasted on television. The Bare Naked Ladies started that video booth and started piling in and singing their songs.
Oh, wow. Oh, you know what? That sounds familiar to me now, actually. I feel like I might have seen a clip of that somewhere in my life, yeah.
On late Friday nights, they would broadcast a Baby Blue movie that was just softcore porn. The station was genuinely bananas. Adding to it was the fact that it was open. The studio was right by the lobby. The offices were right there. You would periodically see VJs wandering through the halls and other people wandering in the shots, and you could see people from the street. Much Music launched in the summer of 1984 and brought a middle finger energy to City along with it. They were in the same building, the same studios, and some of the folks in City moved to Much and back and forth. They just filmed from the building and the lobby and the halls and the studios. All right, there's more and more facts here. Al Music fit right in. Much had sketches and skits and funny bits and weird TV interviews. Nardwuar was on Much Music. Ed the Sock was on Much Music. If you don't know these guys, you need to check them out. Each year, Ed the Sock hosted Ed's Frummage, a countdown of the worst videos that particular year. By the 90s, Much Music was well established, but still very wild. I think Al forsook the prior broadcast for two reasons. One, because we wouldn't have bought it. We wouldn't have believed that he hacked into the system. People were walking in the City of Much Music all the time unannounced. The station was very accessible to the public. And the second reason follows the first. He could just walk in and take over. It perfectly fit with the way that the show was treated. I know this was a long email. I'm sorry, but it brought me a little interest to learn. I thought I might bring you a little interest in learning some of Canadians' alternative media landscape of the 80s and 90s. Love the show. Thanks for doing it, and looking forward for the next several episodes.
Wow. I mean, it feels like we need to do a whole other show about just Much Music and Canadian broadcasting at that time. We did appreciate the Wild West nature of it all on the show. It's amazing to hear. I did know about Nardwuar starting out there, who I'm familiar with. Ed the Sock, I feel like I've heard of, but I don't know a whole lot about.
It's like weirdly familiar.
It's familiar, but I don't know a ton about that. I'm going to have to do some research of my own.
This next one's from Michael. He says, "Hey guys, wanted to bring something to your attention. I've been on a massive Prince kick lately, and in my deep dive, found an MTV special on YouTube for the premiere of Purple Rain. My heart skipped a beat when around the 10-minute and 45-second mark, Al pops up on the screen. Him and John Cougar Mellencamp are interviewed by the original MTV VJ Mark Goodman. Forgive me if this was already covered on the podcast, but I've been listening since the beginning and I can't remember you ever mentioning it. Anyway, the whole video is wonderfully nostalgic and fun. Particularly got a laugh at Prince's bodyguards who look and act like they are pro wrestlers. Love the podcast, and I think you guys are great. Your pal and Al, Mike."
Wow. I don't think we did not see that, did we?
No, so he sent us a link. We'll tackle that on a future.
Yeah, we'll have to go back and revisit that.
All right, so here we are diving into the Bad Hair Day content.
Okay.
This one's from Daniel. He said, "One reference you might have missed and everything you know is wrong is the line, 'I get the room next to the noisy ice machine for all eternity,' which might be a nod to the Ray Stevens 1993 song, Motel Song, from the classic Ray Stevens album. In the chorus, he complains that every inn he stays at gives him the room next to the elevator across from the noisy ice machine."
Interesting.
Do you know who Ray Stevens is? Are you familiar with him at all?
Maybe not. Maybe not.
So Ray Stevens, I remember him because I felt like my grandfather had his VHS tape.
Okay.
He was like the country Weird Al.
Interesting.
He would do stuff like he would cover a beautiful song by Chris Christopherson called "Help Me Make It Through the Night," and it would start off like this beautiful piano playing it, and then all of a sudden it'd be like a real southern drawl kick on, and all of a sudden it was this crazy bluegrass version of the song with sound effects.
Right.
So I'm sure that Al knew who
it sounds
he
like
was.
Someone that Al would be familiar with. I would be a little surprised if he threw in a reference to someone else in such an obvious other artist style parody. Yeah. It's not impossible. It's not impossible.
I'm open to the possibility. This one came from, let's see, did they sign it or am I just going to read what part? Elias. We'll go with Elias.
Elias.
Because their email, I didn't want to read their email.
No.
All right, so they said, Matt, I'm writing in response to your Calling in Sick episode. First of all, I love it when you guys draw connections between songs. For instance, the mere act of recognizing a genre similarity between Young, Dumb, and Ugly when I was your age and Calling in Sick, and then comparing them adds something to your show. Last episode, there was a brief mention of the similarities between Toothless People and Cavity Search. I would love more of that. The more in depth, the better. I think it's valuable to make these connections across Al's career, whether based on genre, theme, song structure, or anything else. In this episode, Matt Milligan mentioned a connection to Dog Eat Dog, and I love that, but his interpretation of that song has surprised me. I'd like to offer an alternative analysis.
An alternative analysis of, well, I guess I'm going to find out. All right, go on. Here I am. Let's do it.
He stated that Dog Eat Dog is about someone, and this is a direct quote from you.
Yep.
Someone climbing the corporate ladder despite the fact that it's useless to do so. But he also said that it's about showing up every day and putting your best foot forward for no reason to no end, and that you'll work your ass off even if it doesn't matter. To me, Dog Eat Dog seems about someone who is under the impression that he's participating in the Dog Eat Dog corporate world and is under the impression that he is climbing a corporate ladder because he is surrounded by people who are actually doing those things, whereas in reality, he's doing nothing of substance. His time is spent amusing himself with paper clips and his boss's neck veins and jelly donuts. He doesn't actually work. He says, "No one's sure what I do here," implying the otherness that his coworkers perceive in him and that he doesn't belong. The chorus makes it sound like this person is basically just grabbing buzzwords and phrases from the people around him and applying it to himself in an effort to fit in. I get the impression that some relative got him a job at the office. Sometimes he can't believe that he's really sitting there because he didn't earn the spot there in any way at all. It's possible his boss is angry precisely because he has to deal with his own boss's incompetent kid. I think then that those two songs are not opposites, but two sides of the same coin. In Calling in Sick, Matt said, you blow off work because you just don't care at all and it has no end. And the speaker in Dog Eat Dog is doing the exact same thing. The only difference is that he's screwing around at work and getting nowhere, while the other is screwing around at home and getting nowhere. Except they are both getting something, joy. They aren't advancing in their careers, but in the middle of the soul vacuum that is late capitalism, they're finding something that makes them feel pretty damn good, not participating in the soul vacuum that is late capitalism. I haven't looked through the rest of Al's songs, but a couple come to mind that deal with working a job, and altogether they paint a pretty grim picture. There's definitely mission statement, Skipper Dan trapped in the drive-thru.
And we got a few coming up. Yeah.
I was going to say theme from Rocky 13 shows a guy pretty happy with his job, but the key difference is that he's his own boss.
True.
And even then, his workplace is haunted by the memories of the work that he truly loves.
True.
The speaker of King of Suede certainly appears to be happy as his own boss, but his underpaid staff probably have experienced more in lines with the other working stiffs in Al's songs. And off the top of my head, I would say the most grisly work-related song I can think of is Night Santa Went Crazy. Being in charge doesn't make the daily grind any easier, I guess, unless you're talking about grinding up poor Rudolph into reindeer sausage. A couple of other notes unrelated to anything in the above. On the alarm clock I had in the 90s, hit the snooze alarm 27 times would mean sleeping an extra 4 hours. Second, you didn't discuss the title Cavity Search. It's a weird title. Any thoughts about it? I do think that Cavity Search is kind of one of the weirder titles because it has absolutely, it's not a parody of the song title at all.
No, I did think, I'm curious. Well, there's a lot to unpack in that email, and we'll start with this. I did think it was weird that he didn't call it just Numb Me, Drill Me, Floss Me, Bill Me, because that would be completely fine and would fit it seems arbitrary that he would do that. It's a little, we noted that he did the same thing on Syndicated Incorporated, where he did not follow the naming structure of the song he was parodying. I don't know what his motivation was. Maybe we'll get to ask him one day. I do agree Cavity Search is a weird name for that song.
Now, what do you think about their breakdown of Dog Eat Dog?
I think that's really interesting. The thing that I was thinking as you were describing that was, I feel like his read is more like Milton from Office Space.
Yes.
With the swing line stapler and just the person who's there and no one's quite sure what they do. Now, that is an interesting, I feel like maybe my analysis is slightly more cynical than his. I like the idea. I agree in part with the idea of this person thinks they're climbing the ladder and they're actually not. I actually do agree with that. And the idea that they're trying to climb the ladder and they feel like they are. I think I read the counting the paper clips and just the monotony of the job is them everyone is doing that in the office. It's not just this person, and it's the trying to find meaning in meaningless work. And yeah, my more cynical read is that you're deluding yourself into thinking you're doing something important, not that you're getting away with something. Because I think that the idea of getting away with something like that is really only appealing for a short time for most people. The idea that you're going to just like fake your way through your entire life is not actually that. It might seem appealing that you're going to get paid to like push papers and move paper clips and stuff, but I feel like, at least for me, Al's take on it is a little bit more dire than that, which is just the idea of like, there's no, even when you're trying to find meaning in that type of a corporate office structure, it's almost never there, no matter what your position is at that job. I love that read, and I totally respect it. You might be right. Maybe again one day we'll get to ask Al about it, but that's my 2 cents on it. But I do love that analysis, and I appreciate and agree with the idea of drawing the connections between these songs. That is also one of my favorite things to do. And as we keep going through the catalog,
we keep finding more
and more. All of these subcategories and themes and topics that he likes to tackle, because I think the more of them we find, the more you get a clearer picture of his overall, beliefs and attitude towards these sorts of things.
Exactly.
All right. Great email. Thank you for that.
Next one's coming from Kevin. He said, "Hello, Matt and Matthew. Discovered the podcast later than I would have liked through Krista Makes and One Hit Thunder, but I ultimately made it here.
Nice.
Then I had the pleasure of binging the entire podcast from the start, right through to Alternative Polka, just in time for Since You've Been Gone to come out. I never had a full Al experience from being a kid, but I remembered him being a thing and always thinking it was kind of funny." And he just kind of gives us a little bit of his story of discovering Al. But he says, "Now for this mailbag, I've mentioned a few specific things. Songs like Jurassic Park, where the parody seems more tame than the original, make me think of Al's appearance in 30 Rock, which I hope you'll be covering when the time comes.
Of course.
Where Jenna makes a crazy song and Al turns it serious. Also, I just need to throw in my 2 cents that Airline Amy is awesome." Bad Hair Days specific,
yes, Team Amy.
Bad Hair Day specific, though, being a few years younger than you guys, who I guess were born in 1990, I missed the being born in 1980, I missed the Smashing Pumpkins train, but Bullet for Butterfly Wings is the song that I knew most by them. I think Al totally nailed it. When I grew up in Long Island and my family took an annual trip to Lancaster, I did hear Amish Paradise, it was always glorious. Thank you for the great analysis. This is almost like you wrote us an email.
Holy cow. This person grew up in Long Island and did an annual trip to Lancaster?
Yeah, like you.
I mean, wow.
Maybe you were at the same Lancaster.
Is that my cousin?
Yeah. Do you have a cousin named Kevin? It might be.
I do have a cousin named Kevin.
Oh, no, maybe it's him. He couldn't find out about the podcast through you, though. He had to listen to Krista Makes.
He had to listen to Krista Makes. Yeah, if that's my cousin Kevin, he's in big trouble. If you're not my cousin Kevin, then wow, we have a lot in common. That's trippy. All right. Thank you. Yes, that's awesome.
This next one comes from Glenn. He says, "Hey, Matt and Matthew, just throwing it out there. When you finally get along to Hamilton Polka, I would humbly volunteer myself if you can't get yourself a real guest. Matthew knows me and knows that I'm a bit of a song analyst at heart. For this one, I'd like to give that I'm a huge Constitutional Convention geek since high school and a big fan of Lin-Manuel Miranda and an Al Polka aficionado. File this in a while when we're looking and we can't get a heavy hitter. We at least have Glenn in our back pocket. Love you both. I'll see you in September, Matthew, hopefully in New Haven and Boston. If she who must be obeyed lets me out of my cave."
I know who this is now. You dropped Glenn towards the end there. The whole thing. I'm like, who is this person? Yes, of course I know Glenn. Absolutely. Glenn. Hi, Glenn. As long as Lin-Manuel does not want to talk about the Hamilton Polka with us, I think you can be the guy.
I think we can make that happen.
I think we can make that happen for you. But if he does return our calls one day, then I'm sorry. We'll bump you to something else.
And we have emailed him.
We have emailed him.
We have absolutely
Of course we have. Yeah.
This one comes from Toon again, who emailed a previous mailbag, but he says, "Hey, Matt and Matthew, first of all, how dare you for putting Calling in Sick that low? How? I'm speechless. I love that song. I can't believe you, Matt
I didn't put it that low. I just want to make it clear, because we just both got lumped in together on that, and I did not put it as low as Matt Kelly did.
No, he addressed it to me. I've been getting into the Beatles lately, like 50 years late, I know, but people seem to be freaked out over the scary songs, like Maxwell Silverhammer and such. And I think it's not funny, but for me, it seems totally normal. What's being an Al fan if it doesn't normalize murder in song lyrics?
That's what I'm saying.
But then he has a couple questions for us, and First one was just how was meeting Jim West.
He was very nice. It was a pretty brief exchange.
It was a very brief
We were
exchange.
at a screening of Weird, and he was there, and we just tapped him on the shoulder and said hey and explained who we were, and he was very, very gracious and took a photo and stuff, and then the movie started. So there's no faster way to end a conversation than for a movie to start. But he was very, very kind and warm right away. I mean, that was my read immediately, right?
Yeah. No, I agree.
We didn't get to talk about it as much, but also at that event, and you took off a little bit earlier than me, I also did get to meet Dr. Demento
and Magic Mike, right?
Musical Mike
Musical
Kiefer
Mike.
were also in the room for that show. And that was, I got to shake both of their hands and thank them for their service. And that made me feel really good. I was very, very happy to be able to do that. Thanks to Dave and Ethan and their podcast for helping us make that happen, because that was their event that they invited us to, and that was a real treat.
He also said, I like your I Remember Larry idea because an Al-written R-rated movie just seems funny to me. But
I would love to know. I really feel like Al's music is too, like, the odds that Al has not at some point pitched or tried to workshop some sort of a script or screenplay, like, that has to be true.
Wait until there's another I Remember Larry question coming up that's pretty awesome.
Foreshadowing. I'm inadvertently foreshadowing.
But he said, do you also think that Al's gory songs are just some of his intrusive thoughts? I mean, he does write them in the first person after all.
He almost always writes in the third person, or in the first person, excuse me. I think probably a little bit, but I also think that he knows that there is something oddly funny in a cathartic way about being so blunt and matter of fact with horrifying stories like that. There's just something about it. I mean, again, it's not for everybody. As we were just saying, like, people who find Maxwell Silverhammer horrifying might not agree with me on this, but yeah, there's something I find very just satisfying and cathartic, I think is the right word. I would hope Al just feels the same.
And the last thing here, we do not have the time to do this question, but I'm going to make a mental note for like an anniversary episode. It said, anyway, question time. If you could make a concept album based solely on Al's tracks, original and parody, what would the storyline be and what's the track list?
Oh my God.
Yeah, so that one's going to take some prep.
That's a great idea though, especially because we just came off the email talking about the connective tissue between different songs and like threads of like thematic threads.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a great idea, but I actually feel like we have to complete the discography first.
Yes, that's
before
like
we
towards
could
the very
possibly
end.
do that. But maybe we could do that in the same style as like our food album draft or
Like a draft.
TV album draft.
I agree.
That's a fun idea. Thank you for that. We're definitely going to put that on the back burner and talk about that one again.
Well, the I Remember Larry episode still has people commenting because we got an email from Sophie that said, I had to comment on your I Remember Larry episode. Al was actually seriously bullied all throughout school, being 2 years younger than everybody. Yeah. On a podcast, his college friend tells a particularly traumatic event when a bunch of college bullies pulled on Al. This song seems to be Al's way of coping with the PTSD that he has from the unrelenting bullying all throughout his formative years. Very similar to his cathartic song, One More Minute, recovering from being dumped in real life. I could see there being a little bit of truth to there.
Absolutely. I mean, I think, people, it's no coincidence that there are a lot of comedians, even just straight comedy, stand-up comedy, who have had a background of bullying or, it's a coping mechanism. It's a way of grappling with a tough thing, is being able to laugh at it. People do it all the time. So I'm, it's sad to hear, but I'm not surprised that would have been part of Al's experience. And yeah, maybe it is something of a coping mechanism, is him imagining being able to get revenge in a really intense way. Yeah.
This next one comes from Tom. It's specifically about Syndicated Incorporated.
Okay.
He has two questions. He says, do you feel that Misery is a questionable choice to use for a parody, seeing as it wasn't that big of a hit song? And two, regarding all of Al's songs that just rattle off different TV shows from Brady Bunch up to Couch Potato, do you feel like this is his weakest? I mean, I think in the episode I clarified that I definitely don't think it's I prefer this over Brady Bunch for sure. And yeah, we talked about that a little bit. Misery is not the biggest Soul Asylum song.
It's not the biggest.
Personally,
I like that song, so I actually have no problem with him doing it. We say, like, Al can't know. Most of the time when he's picking a topical song to parody, he can't possibly know the historical context of like how we're going to look back on it in 5, 10, 20, 30 years. So he's making the best guess he can based on his own taste, and usually he's really good about it. Misery has not quite stayed around pop culture in the way that a lot of his other songs have. But I don't know. I dig it, and I do. I think we've definitely expressed over the span of the show that Al's parodies, where he is kind of just doing the sort of pop culture mashup, where he's taking a song and then talking about a different medium through that song, are not always like my all-time favorite thing Al does. I like more of the satirical stuff than that. But Syndicated, I think, is a great example of that thing. Like, I dig it.
Yeah. He also threw, this is a really good question, which of the unused parodies do you think would have been best to stay on the album? Come Out and Play for The Offspring, Numb for U2, Free as a Bird for the Beatles, or I'll Be There for You from the Rembrandts. Obviously, we've only heard like snippets of what a chorus would be here, but I think the idea of the I'll Be There for You parody being I'll Repair for You as the Home Improvement theme song, I think is the one I wish existed.
And I'm going to say I actually like the Numb, Green Eggs and Ham one the best, I think. I think that is so unique and different and weird for Al. We'll probably, we're going to talk about these songs at some point in time. I'll Repair for You and the, not fully released ones, but I like I'll Repair for You, the short version of it. But I'll be honest, this is jumping way ahead. I think that Handy is a better Repair song than anything he would have done with the Rembrandts track.
That's probably true. Yeah.
I think Handy scratches that itch for me in a way that, he could have never seen that coming back when he was doing this, but I'm happy with that as his handyman anthem.
Well, we're almost done. We got 2 more left to go, so we're killing this. This one comes from Damon, who says, Dear Fearless Leaders, love getting to revisit Bad Hair Day because honestly, it wasn't an album that I listened to when it was released.
Ooh.
I was 18 when it came out, and I was in my Al's still good, but there are better things out there phase. I had dubbed tapes of all the parodies, but none of the originals. Flash forward, and now I've slowly come to love the originals on this album. Most of them I heard on compilations through the years and wasn't aware that they were from this record. Now I'm starting to think that it may be my favorite Weird album. Before I go, there's this theory that I have. Al's backward message in I Remember Larry of, wow, you must have an awful lot of free time on your hands, wasn't just for the audience. It's the narrator sneering at Larry as he dies because Larry took so much time out of his life to torture the narrator.
Whoa.
Keep up the good work and don't forget Spy Hard before you get to Running with Scissors.
We will not forget Spy Hard. That is... I have to say that is such a dark analysis of the backmasking in that song. Like, I would have never thought of that.
I kind of love it though.
I kind of love it too. I don't know if that was Al's intent at all. I always assumed he was just making fun of the people who were so desperate to find a satanic message that they would go to that length to reverse his CD. I think, as we mentioned in the episode, like playing a CD backwards at that moment in time in the 90s was not something most people could do with home technology. That took some real effort to do that. So I assume that's who he was mocking. But boy, if he wants to throw it back at Larry and just a final message of how much of his life was wasted, his short life, the short life of Larry.
Actually, Jose, I forgot. I miscounted. There are 2 more starting with this one.
Great.
This is a great email.
Okay.
It says, hey guys, long-time listener, many-time guest, first-time writer. Loved your Phony Calls episode with Dave and Ethan. Since you specifically called out how strange the lyric, I'll come and bust your head right in with a ratchet, I thought it'd be worth mentioning that that's actually a very specific reference to a Jerky Boys call, where they call a mechanic, demand a job, and ultimately threaten to bust their victim's fucking head in with a ratchet. You can actually see the cartoon logo of the Jerky Boys as holding a ratchet on their first album. Great work as always. I'll talk to you in 5 minutes probably.
On. Was this email written by MC Lars?
Nope.
Jeff. As soon as you said the Jerky Boys thing, I was like, is this Lars? Because Lars is, as I think I mentioned in that episode, is so obsessed with the Jerky Boys. Like, we talk about the Jerky Boys almost every time I see him. But of course, I was like, it's either Lars or Jeff.
Yeah.
It's Jeff. Thank you, Jeff. We love you, Jeff.
And then we got this message on Instagram from a Jeff who said, when I first heard Syndicated Incorporated, I wasn't familiar with Soul Asylum Misery. At the time, I read that he had done a Soul Asylum parody, and I was confident that Night Santa Went Crazy was the parody of Black Gold. As if suffering a Mandela effect, I came to learn that I had it all wrong. But oh, the joy of listening to your podcast and Matt mentioning that Night Santa Went Crazy is very similar to Black Gold. Heck, both songs even have field recordings of people screaming during the bridge. Anyway, love the podcast.
There you go. It's funny. I pushed back a little bit on the Black Gold thing in that episode, but following the recording of that episode, I listened more and more, and it's pretty hard to deny. I'll be honest. It's pretty hard to deny. I think it has to have been at least a strong reference point for Al.
Piece by piece.
Revolutionary artist Pharrell Williams invites you to Piece by Piece, a first-of-its-kind Lego movie event.
What if we told my story with Lego pieces?
Let's do it.
Discover what it takes to build the greatest hits with Kendrick Lamar, Jay-Z, Justin Timberlake, Pusha T, Gwen Stefani, and Snoop Dogg.
I was always a bad gangster, but you brought out the fun in me.
Hell yeah.
Piece by piece.
Get tickets now for Piece by Piece. Rated PG. Parental guidance suggested. Directed by Morgan Neville. Only in theaters this Friday.
This is the sound of your ride home with Dad after he caught you vaping. Awkward, isn't it? Most vapes contain seriously addictive levels of nicotine and disappointment. Know the real cost of vapes. Brought to you by the FDA.
Hi, friends. The world got you down. Don't be sad. Listen to $2 Late Fee with Zach and Dustin.
$2 Late Fee is the podcast that celebrates the best decade of entertainment, the 1980s. We pick a movie and soundtrack from our youth that we loved and see if it holds up today. We also interview your favorite celebrities from that era.
All in the spirit of positivity and togetherness. Check us out at $2latefee.com.
And we can kind of speed run this last part. There were 3 things that I found that happened between Bad Hair Day and the next album that we're talking about that needed to mention. The first one was Who Stole the Kishka by Frankie Yankovic. This was from the album Frankie Yankovic and Fans, and it features Al on accordion and backup vocals. And there's really not much to discuss on this beyond the fact that this was a thing Al did for Frankie Yankovic, which is fascinating.
I mean, the only thing that I really took from it is fascinating. Like, Al, I guess, is playing accordion on it, but you can clearly hear his voice in the chorus as well. He's singing on it, too. The thing I was struck by is that polka music is just funny.
Yeah.
Like Frankie Yankovic's, it's a hilarious song. It's really funny and silly. And like Al could have probably just made regular polka music his whole career and been very successful like Frankie.
So it's I found a little bit of a Wikipedia fun fact.
Okay, great.
So it said Who Stole the Kishka is a polka song written by Walter Dana and Walter Solik. It had been recorded and performed by various bands, but the most popular version to American radio audiences was the 1963 recording by Grammy-winning polka artist Frankie Yankovic. According to the obituary for lyricist Walt Solik, who wrote and recorded the song, Kishka always got the crowd going at the Polkaholic shows, and it has since it was recorded back in the 50s with English lyrics. So just a fun little fact about that song.
That's great. I enjoyed it very much. I have definitely never heard that song before earlier today.
We'll jump to the shorter of the 2 videos.
Sure.
I had you watch an episode of Eek the Cat, the Fugitive, where did you watch the whole episode or just the 90 seconds I recommended?
No, I did actually watch the whole. So the link you sent me was the 2 parts. You know, it was like 2 episodes. So I watched the entire one that had Al in it.
Yeah, I watched the Fugitive one. I didn't watch the first episode. Yeah. The premise of this episode, and I actually remember this episode. I can't believe I remember.
I never watched Eat the Cat. Like I was familiar with this show, but I did not watch it, so I had no background, and I was perplexed. This is a wild show.
So here's something that makes that show make more sense. It is what Savage Steve Holland did after making Better Off Dead in One Crazy Summer.
Oh, okay. That actually does. It has that level of insanity and absurdity to it.
It is very bizarre, and it's the show, for those of you who don't know, Eek is a purple cat who has a pet shark, or his girlfriend has a pet shark dog.
Shark dog.
Named Sharky. And in this particular episode, Sharky is a fugitive on the run for robbing a armored truck from the bank. And it's this insane explanation of Sharky flying up into the Earth's atmosphere and crashing into.
Well, he crashes down because he builds a catapult to get rid of Eek the Cat.
Yeah.
But then he triggers his own trap, like Wile E. Coyote style, and that sends him into space, and he flies through an armored truck and gets accused of robbing the truck, and so he has to go on the lam, and then it just becomes a fugitive.
It's literally an episode
pastiche.
of America's Most Wanted with the actual host of
That's
America's
right, a full-on America's Most Wanted. It's like America's Most Wanted meets The Fugitive, And it is so surreal and absolutely strange. And then Al appears for
no
reason.
No reason. I do have to call out my favorite non-Al related line because it's right before Al shows up, where the host of America's Most Wanted goes, and our scientists did the math and figured out that the hole that Sharky left is in fact the hole that a shark dog would leave if it was dropping back into the Earth's atmosphere.
It's absolutely insane.
But
I mean,
I did write down a few things with Al. So Al shows up because he was shooting a music video for his song Peppermint Twister, which was Chubby Checker meets the movie Twister. And that Sharky the Shark Dog, who has amnesia from the crash, is one of the backup dancers.
Yeah, he's been spotted in the background, yeah.
And there's two lines. First, Eek the Cat's like, Weird Al, I love that one song where you say, and he stops him and says, if you sing one note, I'll be paying some goofballs publishing from now until forever.
Yes.
And then when he's showing the footage, he goes, to quote an educational show that's also very heavily copywritten, one of these things is not like the other.
Yes. There's a very, in the background, when he makes the joke about we can't sing that song, there's like a little like very cheesy like background music instrumental that sounds a lot like Beat It / Eat It. But that's the most music you get from this Al cameo.
And his music video is him in his suit from Fat with two tap dancers dressed as twisters, just tap dancing next to him. It's so bizarre. And then my favorite part is at the very end, he just goes, the host of John, the host of America's Most Wanted, just goes, and I understand you've been elected to Congress. And he just goes, that's right, John, and then walks off.
Yep, that's it. That's it, and just walks away. Congressman Al. See, that's the spinoff we needed. We didn't get that.
Now, the last thing we watched was the craziest one.
Oh, boy.
And it was the TV movie. I remember watching this premiere. I was so excited for this.
You are a madman, Matt Kelly. You were excited for Safety Patrol?
It was a movie starring...
I had never heard of this.
I saw the advertisements that it was a movie starring Leslie Nielsen and Weird Al Yankovic and Booger from Revenge of the Nerds. And that was my Thursday night or whatever.
Wow.
But yes, the big final third act takes place at an Al Yankovic concert at like a local fair. We get Al performing Gump with a giant inflatable Al Yankovic behind him.
I don't know how big it actually was, but the way they shoot this sequence of Gump, Al is performing, and behind him is a balloon of him in the same outfit. That looks like it is 200 feet tall. It is like a Godzilla-sized balloon. It is like frightening. And then when they reframe the camera shot, it looks like a way more reasonable size, but it is big.
But you also get the benefit of a bunch of children extras awkwardly dancing to the song Gump.
To Gump, yes.
And then when he finishes the set, he takes a brief intermission. The crowd's just chanting, Al, Al, Al.
Yeah.
And then I do love, this has nothing to do with Al really, but the principal, I guess, sees the main character of the show and she goes, that little pyro is by Weird Al's van. His kind doesn't belong here.
It's all classic, very Disney stuff because the adults keep calling kids like nincompoops. Yeah. And it's just hilarious. It's so silly and ridiculous.
And I had to laugh because Al's tour van is basically just a U-Haul with his face painted on the side of it.
Yeah.
And he walks out of it, and they had handed him a security camera tape. And he goes, this is great filmmaking. I simply must put it to music sometime. And then Al goes on stage and plays the security footage and performs the song, The Ballad of Kent Marlowe. And I have the lyrics here. And it's, you did a really rotten thing and let Scout take all the blame. You wrecked his reputation and left that poor boy in shame. And now I think it's time to show who really did the crime. Kent Marlowe, you dirty, lying, worthless hunk of slime. Kent Marlowe, you're a dirty, cheating, lying, no good, lousy, stinking, backstabbing, scum-sucking, worthless hunk of slime.
And then Al and his band point at a child and go, slime, 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 slime. And all of the kids are pointing at this kid. Again, I'm going to be totally honest. I watched this on the tour bus this morning. I did not watch the whole film, so I don't know how slimy exactly the thing this kid did was, but it was pretty rough to see everyone chanting at this child. And the kid's mom just comes and takes him away embarrassed. Like, you've embarrassed me for the last time. One of those moments. And I guess then it worked out for the Safety Patrol.
Well, and then you do get the extra piece where the criminals of the movie steal Al's balloon, which turns out to be a hot air balloon attached to like a basket with bicycle pedals.
Well, okay, so hang on. The criminals rob... This whole event with a Weird Al concert as part of it is also like a PTA bake sale. And the PTA bake sale is doing so well that there is a whole tent of people just counting the money for the bake sale. There's stacks of cash. And then these two criminals show up and rob the tent of the money and then try to escape in a Weird Al balloon, but they get caught. Someone sees them, so then their only other plan is to kidnap one of the children as a hostage.
And they kidnap this little girl who, this was so embarrassing. Her name, when I was looking at the credits, I'm like, I know that name. Why do I know that name? She was in Nothing Famous. But the year before this, she starred in a horror anthology movie that I love called Campfire Tales, which was just like retellings of urban legends. And she's the little girl in a story called People Can Lick Too. That's like the famous story of like the girl who
You just recognized her from that?
No, I recognized the name when I was looking at the credits. I'm like, why do I know the name Alex McKeenan or McKenna or whatever? So I clicked into her Wikipedia. I'm like, oh yeah, she's a little girl.
Matt Kelly, you are a madman. You are a crazy enough person to also try to get away in a Weird Al balloon. But I cannot believe that you could have made that connection. That's insane.
They try to get away in this hot air balloon. Yep. And did you catch the one last Al cameo when he's trying to get his balloon back and he's inexplicably knocked over by what looks to be like a floor buffer that's just running rampant across the grass at this fall festival?
Well, because it doesn't like the grandpa arrives on the floor. Like grandpa shows up and he's like walking with a walker, but then he sees the kid. He's like, "It's you!" And he drops the walker like he's gonna just walk forward, but then he steps on a electronic mop and slides across the whole thing and knocks Al over, and then he goes through a plate glass window. And the end of the movie is Grandpa, who is so frail, like flying through a glass window, and he's laying on the ground, literally laying in glass. And everyone's just like, "Oh, Grandpa."
Yeah, crazy Grandpa. But that's
wow.
I mean, that's the movie. That's our mailbag episode.
That's our mailbag episode.
I mean, this is going to come out in early October. I think you've already told me that basically the Matt Milligan tour schedule is pretty lax.
Pretty much. There's going to be, we have one last show in Pennsylvania, actually, before the end of the year at the Music Fest Cafe in Bethlehem.
That's not too far.
Not terribly far. For people who want to come out, I think that is our last show of the year. It is on November. I don't have my phone. A date in November.
Okay.
Check Wheatus.com for that. And then we're in the UK in February, again with Bowling for Soup.
Nice.
In the UK. So that's what's next on the docket. But yes, thank you all so much. That was so many messages for the mailbag that we were a little stunned, honestly.
I do have to throw one other thing out.
Go.
December 6th.
Yes.
Geekscape TV.
Yes.
We'll be doing our holiday live stream. I haven't worked out all of the details with you.
No.
But I will tell you that we will be premiering the short 7-minute documentary of us getting Jim's game to work, and we might do a live playthrough of the game for the people watching.
God.
So if you're listening to the show and you've been following the saga of Jim's homemade Weird Al RPG,
boy, do we have a Christmas gift for you.
Boy, do we ever. So stay tuned for that, and we'll be back next week with your regular Al content.
Thanks, guys.
You're listening to the Geekscape Network.